Author Dana Diaz overcame a difficult childhood with an emotionally distant mother and a narcissistic stepfather. She focused solely on her survival. Lacking self-esteem, she unknowingly entered an abusive marriage despite clear red flags. Today, Dana's a powerful advocate for those too afraid or ashamed to speak out about their struggles. Her debut book, Gasping for Air, chronicles her nearly decade-long abusive marriage, starting as a hidden journal beneath a basement couch cushion. In her follow-up, Choking on Shame, she delves into the impact of generational abuse and her journey to break free. Her third book, Rising from the Ashes, calls readers to transform their pain into purpose, seeking inner peace and joy.
Hi, I'm Dana Diaz. I am an author of a trilogy about narcissistic abuse, and I am so glad to be here with you, Susan.
I'm glad to see you. For those listening, Dana and I are friends. We met a couple of years ago and we've had similar experience. So I just can't stop giggling. And most people would not be giggling if they knew of what Dana has experienced in her life, but she brings so much light and joy. So thanks for being here. Thanks for introducing yourself. And let's just start straight out. Like just
Okay,
give us a tidbit of that yummy childhood.
because I was born to a teenage mother, and back in the 70s, it was not okay to be a teenager that was pregnant. So there was a lot of shame put onto my mother. And the added aspect for me was that she didn't even want children, which was proven when she had her tubes tied immediately after my birth. But it was a rough ride after that because she didn't even want to take me home from the hospital. From what I've been told by multiple family members, my great grandma was there, my grandma was there, and great grandma looked at me and said, "There's no way you're taking that baby. That's my baby." And so thankfully, she took me home. And for all purposes, in my heart, she is my mother. And I'm thankful that I had the first handful of years of my life with her because she was my mother. She rocked me when I needed rocking at night. She soothed me when I got hurt. She fed me. She clothed me. She sang to me. She was my mother in my heart. Well, when my actual mother decided to move on with her life, get married, and what have you, I was about 7 years old when she married her husband. He was an abusive narcissist. I did not like him literally from the first day I met him. The very first time I met him, in fact, I was in his car and had my hands on his open window, kind of clasped over it, and he rolled the window up to crush my fingers. That was my first impression of this man that my mother decided to marry. And he laughed about it and he was not sorry. And so, being a child, I did not know what a narcissist was, but my experience with this man was consistent over the years until I finally left at 18 because this is a man that did not have remorse, that intentionally wanted to harm me verbally, physically, however he could. And mom didn't do anything to allow it. In fact, she would tell me often that he wouldn't be doing or saying the things he was doing to me or saying to me if he didn't care about me so much.
What a twisted message about self-esteem and trust right there. So
Yeah,
here you are 18 and you're dripping wet. You really don't have any tools and you don't really have any boundaries because you're so busy caring for someone else's needs who's
100%.
sucking your energy dry. So what was 18 like? What were your first relationships like? Who were you then?
It's funny, even like I had a boyfriend in high school. I had a couple boyfriends, but like one long term, like the high school sweetheart. But it's terrible because looking back, I remember the boy that like everybody wanted this boy to ask them out. He was like your all-American guy and a nice guy and handsome as heck. I have a thing for tall blondes, so my type at least. But he asked me out and I was like, me, like I was like screaming inside, oh my gosh, yes, yes, yes. But I said no. I said no to him. You know why? I didn't know what the hell to do with a nice guy. I mean, we all I joke around all the time. I even think I said it in my book that we all like a little bit of a bad boy, but I wouldn't know the first thing to do with somebody that actually treated me well. Because again, in my head, my mother had ingrained it in my head that love and abuse go together. They were the same. And so, and I hate to say, even now, fast forward, I'm 49 years old, remarried a couple of years ago. And with my current husband, there have been a few times where, and thank God I'm self-aware enough now, but he's a very gentle, very quiet man. It's challenging for me at times because, the silent treatment I had over the years and what have you. But it's so calm and so peaceful that sometimes I gotta stir crap up, like create the chaos, because that's how I have experienced love in most of my life, at least before him. So it's kind of been a new learning experience at this age to learn that this peace and this calm and nothing happening, this tranquility, that's love. That in itself is a beautiful gift of love to give my nervous system the safety to be around this man, to know that I'm safe physically, that there isn't going to be some verbal assault on me because of something I did or didn't do or might have not said correctly or whatever it is. But yeah, it's a very it's enlightening for me though to look back and see my mother with her husband and all that she enabled, excused, and tolerated, because she was trying to basically groom me to be the same way, except that I knew even as a kid that it wasn't right. But then unfortunately, it was so I internalized all of these things to the point where it still affects me today. And thank God I've been working through it and can catch myself and say, ooh, yeah, we don't do that anymore. So we're going to move on and do this peaceful stuff and have a nice, happy life, because nobody wants that kind of, chaos in their life. But even our bodies get used to it, sort of like that adrenaline rush you get. If you don't have that rush of cortisol or that panic that something's wrong or what's going to happen, sometimes your body wants you to start stuff up so that you get that rush back because that's how you feel the love. That's what your body is used to feeling in a love relationship. But that's not what it should be, and it's not what anyone really wants.
But you're so groomed into the toxicity. So
Absolutely.
you walked out of one toxic system and pretty much set yourself up pretty quickly thereafter for
100%.
yeah, the next one, which is the topic of your first book, Gasping for Air, which
Yeah.
is just it's such a brutal expose of the truth and how the mechanism operates. But take us through the red flags that came up that you ignored, that you knew you were going to repeat what you had lived, but you were so ready to.
It was so heartbreaking for me, even because even being in that moment, the first time I met my ex-husband, I joke around, but it's like the Lost in Space robot with its coily arms, danger, danger, Will Robinson. I literally remember that going on in my head because this man reminded me so much of my abusive stepfather. That the arrogance and the aloofness and the dismissiveness and the sense of entitlement. And I'm looking at him like, who is he? Like, I don't know that any one of us deserves that. We're all human, but who is this guy? Like, 21 years old walking in here, like, I owe him something. But even though all of this was very present and very much in the forefront of my thoughts, that people pleasing stuff, that need for approval overrides all of that sense that we're making of reality. And I just fell into what I call the puppy dog mode of, okay, whatever you want, because I gotta have you like me. I can't stand if you don't like me. You gotta like me because I need to make sure that everybody is pleased with me because I learned in childhood another thing. If somebody's not pleased, if something is not okay, it is somehow my fault. So it is my responsibility to make sure everybody's okay. which makes us great in sales. I did very well in real estate, but um, not what you want to have as your prime quality in a romantic relationship. But exactly as you said it primed me for this life of servitude to this narcissist. So when he saw that I was willing to jump through these hoops, then yes, of course, he moved right in saying all the things. And that should have been a red flag alone. It's always funny to me looking back of, he's asking me questions and I'm telling him a little bit about my life. And, it's kind of like that Me Too movement. It was literally a Me Too movement that night, just having the talk with him. Really? Me too. Oh, you felt that way at home? Me too. Me too. I thought, oh my gosh, this is my soulmate. We're meant to be. And of course, he reiterated that with his own sweet words and the lure of promises and forever. And when you're telling a girl that just wants love and just wants a little attention and to be seen, um, yeah, that was a setup for disaster.
When did you really wake up within that system to say, oh my gosh, something is not right? I mean, you obviously knew something was not right when you weren't even married. You were
A
dating.
100%. I think, and it goes back to like you were talking about the red flags. I mean, we could give a list of red flags that, things that nobody would want in a relationship or in a partner. But I think the biggest red flag was actually me because I was aware of how I felt. I was aware of that he reminded me and very much acted like my stepfather, very controlling and the angry outbursts and I get very upset when I'm around, anger that gets to the point of holes being punched in walls and doors coming off hinges and things flying across the room. That should have been the red flag, but the red flag was me because my body was very anxious. My body was, I was having stomach aches, the stress causing me headaches, all these built-in alarm systems were going off and I ignored them because it'll get better. He'll get older or maybe he just had a bad day and he'll mature. But even as I was walking up the steps to walk down the aisle to marry him and the wedding march is playing in my head, I mean, I am literally thinking, what am I doing? I don't want to do this. I don't want to marry this man. This is not my guy. But I kept putting one foot in front of the other. So you want to talk about a red flag? She's right here.
Yeah.
She's right here. I mean, but it's very true. We get in our own way sometimes because for whatever reason, we don't want to believe what we're seeing. We don't want to believe what we're feeling. That's the red flag that we should be paying attention to.
I agree wholeheartedly, but yet it's still so hard to see in every area. So finally, what was sort of the linchpin where you said, no more. I'm not doing this. I don't care what it takes. I'm leaving. I'm out. It's me. It's
Yeah, it's sad to me because everybody thinks they know what their deal breaker is. If he cheats on me, if they, whatever it is, the obvious things. It should have been a lot of those things. It wasn't. It was actually when I became sick. It was about 23 years into our relationship, maybe 24 years, but it was right about the very end, obviously. Um, I became very ill and I'll actually never forget November 3rd, 2018. It was just another Saturday night. And I say that with much sarcasm because it was nothing that hadn't happened before between us. But it was another incident of him sexually overpowering me, and I did not want it to happen. And it just was so, as I was just laying there numbing myself to it, I just the violation and the anger and all these things that I had suppressed just eh, I think they just finally said, if you're not going to do anything, we're going to do something about it. My body, the day after that, I will never forget, my body felt different. And it started with urinary frequency of all things. I mean, I was going over a dozen times an hour and I'm like, what's wrong with me? 2 weeks later, I was down to 93 pounds. I'm small, but I mean, it was almost a 20-pound loss of weight. Something was going on. Long and short of it, go to doctor after doctor. They're all running these tests. They all want to give me a pill, but they finally figured out what was wrong with me. A neurologist and a functional medicine doctor figured out that I had upper airway resistance syndrome, which is a rare lung syndrome similar to having COPD and fibromyalgia all at once. But guess what? It's very common in victims of abuse. And it's caused by high cortisol, which is the stress hormone. And, you know, they ran all these tests and the doctor just said, honey, your body is shutting down. You're nothing is functioning in your body. I mean, I could give you all the different symptoms and all the things, but I couldn't even at one point tear toilet paper off the roll. I couldn't even, my fingers couldn't even pick up a dryer sheet to put in the laundry. Um, I was withering away. And that's when I remember laying in bed that night and just like that this isn't, you know, I'm a runner. I coach cross country. I run 5 miles a day. I'm one of these weirdos that eats hard boiled eggs and apples for lunch. Like I'm healthy. Like this should not be my life. I don't want my life to be over him of all things. And so that was the first time I always say it's the first time I finally said yes to myself and no to somebody else. And it's the hardest thing I ever had to do because I didn't want to disappoint everybody, never my, my son mainly, but I had to. And you know what the beautiful thing was that it was a little tricky getting out and leaving and divorcing. And there was some incidents after the divorce. It wasn't just easy peasy. But once we got through all that, my symptoms just they went away and I'm a healthy weight now and I don't have all this craziness like I can it's funny like I joke I'm like a toddler I can sleep through the night again because I'm safe and I don't feel that somebody is going to come and attack me in the middle of the night and to be able to sleep all night again what a wonderful thing that we take for granted but when you're losing sleep and your body isn't functioning that's not a life and it is very hard to function and to think clearly when you're going through all of that so that was the thing for me was me my physical body saying no we're done with this so I had to get on board with it otherwise we might not even be here right now.
It's so powerful and the way that you describe it. And now you're somewhat away from it. I mean, it hasn't been that long, but what is it
Right.
been 5, 6 years?
It'll be 5 years this year, yeah, so it's still fresh.
Are you able to see it in a new lens at all, other than and how does that manifest for you?
I think it's just interesting to look even looking back at pictures or I'm just trying to think of how to put this. I think it's just that when your perspective about yourself changes and your perspective about your situation, when you see things for what they really are, instead of, the rose-colored glass version that you had on because you were trying to convince yourself that life was something different than what you were experiencing, it starts to kind of all fall into place, and I call it making sense of nonsense, but it did actually make sense. I just didn't want to see it. So now I see it and it does make sense, but I look at it like this that, I'm not going to cry about it anymore. It doesn't upset me. I've worked very hard, in healing, and I will always be working to maintain, the healing and keep improving my mindset. But it all came back to me. I can't control other people. I can't control what they do, the choices they make in life, how they decide to treat me or anyone else, or whether they respect somebody, love somebody. I can only control myself. And I think that I'm just at a place where I understand that things needed to happen the way they needed to happen for me to come to the conclusion that I came to and to live the life I'm living now, which I'm very, very happy with and I'm very blessed. And, for those who believe in the spiritual realm like I do, I think for me, it did actually come full circle, because I did have all these things that I had always wanted in my life. And everything that happened basically served to feed me directly into that path. So, for me, it's coming full circle, sort of coming home, coming into exactly who I am and who I was always meant to be. And maybe all those people that did all those terrible things, for whatever it's worth, it was my gift from the universe to make sure that I did stay on my rightful path. And I've been judged by some to think that, well, if you want to think that to make yourself feel better, well, I do, because you know what? We're all human. I can't control somebody else's decision to heal or not to heal, but I also am at a place where I don't have any bad feelings about any of the people that did what they did. They chose what they chose in their life. I have to respect that. Wish things had been different, but do I really? Because I kind of like where things are right now. So,
And it's beautiful because this goes back into your lineage. I think I saw a post of you with it was your great grandma that took you as um
my great grandma took me when I was a baby. Yeah. You might have seen a picture of my grandma, though. I don't know that I have anything with my great grandma.
it sounds like there was similar experience in her own life that you also experienced, but managed to evolve out of the lineage by your
Yeah.
experience and how you're handling it now. And
Yeah.
so you basically you broke the mold, right? You
I
got out of
think
the
I
make.
broke the mold. I
Yeah.
think so. Now, it's interesting though that I did have somebody say that she said, "You think you're the cycle breaker, but you're not." And I said, "But I am. I broke it. I thought I did it." She says, "No, you made the decision that the cycle should be broken. We'll see what happens with your son." And I said, "Oh, goodness gracious." So so the pressure's on him now.
I could say the same, but our sons have their own trajectory and their
Right.
own reason to be here
Right.
and have the experiences
A
they
hundred
have.
percent.
So now that you're clear, you've
Yeah.
had the whole full experience and you're in a grounded place, a happier place, coming from a different space. Maybe your heart's a little bit more open
Yeah.
than it's ever been. How do you see the same toxicity, the same narcissism, or the same, just
Yeah. It's everywhere.
yeah, yeah, that's what I want to say. Where else do you see it in your life? And now that you've had the experience that you've had, how does that affect you in dealing with the same toxicity that you're seeing in other systems?
Yeah, that's a great question. As far as where I've seen it, yeah, everywhere. I mean, I remember going to the court to get the order of protection against my ex, and the judge said, "Well, there's no record of anything. If it was so bad, how come you never filed a report against him before?" And I thought, "Oh, so now we're going to shame me? Let's start the victim shaming." And even, then we go into the cops, the police departments, and you have one power tripping, police chief after another or sergeant or whatever that like to abuse their authority because they can get away with things. And then I have people come forward telling me it's actually shocking how many people I have met that have been partners of people in the police force, that have experienced things and they have the backing of their brothers and sisters in blue, to get away with what they do. And so but I've seen it everywhere. I see it at we were joking around about schools, and even in PTA meet, everywhere in sports. It's so difficult because I can spot it a mile away now, or even just at gatherings. You go to a party and whatever, and just the arrogance, the entitlement, or the way I catch people talking to their wives or sometimes to their husbands. And I'm just like, oh, I wouldn't like that. I'm kind of embarrassed that I witnessed that, but you know, it's, I think what I have learned from it is just there's no avoiding it. It's out there. So it kind of goes back to what am I going to do about it? I can't change the entire world. None of us can just by being one person. But what I can do is, going back to our sons, I can be a model to him of how we react to those types of people. Am I going to engage and go back and forth with something? No, I'm not going to exchange insults with you. I'm not going to break my peace with myself, and risk my character and my integrity because somebody else, feels that their ego, is superior to all others and deserves to be fulfilled for whatever it needs. Um, I just kind of let it lie unless it's affecting me personally and directly where I do have to assert myself. That is the one thing that I will do. And I can say no like nobody's business now. And I can set a boundary that nobody is getting through. And nobody wants to mess with that. That's for sure. But that's all I can do. I can be that example to my son, to his girlfriend, to my husband, to the people that are around me on a daily basis. I can be an example. But as my son would say, I have always told him it's every man for himself. You got when it comes down to it, you got to take care of you, and you got to be okay with how you handle things, how you respond to things. And I'm getting a lot better at it. But I think it all is about the ego. And I've done a lot of reading and a lot of trying to get a better understanding of the ego, but that's where the narcissists are mostly working from. And that's where I try not to. So that's my take on that. But there's no avoiding the narcissism. It's everywhere. It's in every system. It's working against us in so many ways, but we can still rise above it and we can still overcome that.
As you have so brilliantly. So
Thank you.
really grateful that you shared your story and told us where you're at. And if people want to visit, do they come to your website? Where do they get
Yes,
your
please.
books?
Yes, danasdiaz.com. The first two books are on there. The third book is coming any day now. I'm
Exciting.
very excited. Yes, yes.
Because you have a powerful experience to share. And to come out of that it's not the typical. So, yeah.
No, it's not, but it's possible. And I think that's my main goal is to show people that it is, and I can certainly help them along the way. So thank you so much for having me. I adore you.
Thanks.